I'm David Temple. I'm the president of the Society, and I want to welcome you to tonight's program. This is the last of the 5 programs that we put on Monday nights during the year. This is going to be put on by the student curators, Charlie Horan and Leah Bonifati. Richard DeStorger had the idea several years ago when he was a member of the board for forever, and of course is a retired teacher, and he thought it would be a good idea to have some student curators, perhaps as a way to reach out to get the younger people more interested in the society. And it's been a very successful experiment, I think. And our 2 student curators this year have really done a great job for us, as they'll be the first to admit. Charlie and Leah are going to talk about the impact of Title IX on high school sports, especially in Medfield. Title IX was enacted about 40 years ago, and it has, to put it mildly, revolutionized school sports in the United States. Before I turn the meeting over to Charlie and Leah, though, I've got a few things I wanted to go over. I need your help in participation in a couple of things. First, I want to just briefly recapping the year. In October, we had Dick Judge talking about the exciting new developments, particularly the water wheel in restoring the grist mill at Kingsbury's Pond. In November, Bill Mann regaled us with tales from his 30-plus years on the Medfield Police Force, mainly as chief. In February, Marge Vassatoro and members of the Nowers family talked about everyday life at the old state hospital when it was a working hospital and had 2,000 or 3,000 residents. And we showed a great video called "A World Apart," and this is still available on YouTube. And if you haven't seen it, it's a very good 29-minute video. And last month, the subject was slavery in colonial Medfield. Former curator Alice Crawley talked about 3 people named Green in the presentation. Two of the Greens were slaves, and the third was a slave owner. This month, we have Charlie and Leah. In June, we're going to have our annual Strawberry Social. This time, we're going to do it at the Society building. I think it's been a while since a lot of you have been in there, and we'd like to be able to show what's new and show what we hope to accomplish going forward in the building. We haven't set the final date yet, but when we do have the deadline, it'll give us an incentive to clean the place up. Saturday, June 14th is Medfield History Day. It's Flag Day, and Richard will be running it as usual, I presume. And do you want to say anything about it?
No, just the only thing, it's a different starting point. They're going to be starting, I'm told, at the Lowell Mason House. You can park at the swim pond parking, and they'll be starting at the Lowell Mason House. There'll be the 6 tours. There will be, I haven't really nailed down the exact topic yet, but they want me to do something with the arts, culture and arts in Medfield will be the main thing.
Okay. And tickets will be?
Tickets will be on sale at Park Street Books.
Okay. Okay, good.
Or if they can get them that day, it's not sold out.
Yeah. Okay. So that brings us up to date for this year, but what about next year is the question. As usual, we on the Society board would be putting on our thinking caps, but tonight I'd really like to appeal to you, all of you, for help coming up with the 5 program ideas. The programs are always about Medfield history, and if the idea is both interesting and funny, I'll stretch the boundaries of what constitutes Medfield history a little further. People come, I conclude, more for infotainment than for a more routine history lecture. And Bill Mann drew the biggest crowd of the year when he talked about his life as the small-town police chief. So I hope that you'll think about potential program ideas and let me know. I'll ask this question again at the end of the night and hope that somebody will come forward with something to think about when the presentation unfolds. Also, in the same vein, this is your historical society, And the more people who participate, the better off we all are. I'm looking for, hoping I could find some people who will write articles for the portal occasionally. This is not an every issue requirement, but occasional articles would be very welcome. We have a couple of vacancies on the board. We'd especially like to find people with some expertise in marketing, web publishing, and historical research. And if you're interested in finding out more about what it involves, please see me after the meeting. And finally, I haven't asked people to sign in all year. I know it's a tedious thing to do, but since I'm looking for volunteers either to write or to be on the board or maybe to help out in other ways, I'm sending the sign-up sheet out. So please sign it when it comes to you. Is everybody getting the portal? Okay. We just the latest one, the April issue went out on April 1st. That was, and that's no fooling. Okay. Okay. At this point, I think I'll turn it over to Charlie and Leah, since this is their show.
Hello. My name is Leah Bonfatti. I am a senior at Medfield High School, and Charlie and I are, oh, there you are. Charlie and I are student curators to the Medfield Historical Society. It's been an awesome year. We've had a lot of fun, and I just wanted to say that the reason why we're wearing these ridiculous outfits is because I play softball and Charlie runs track, so we decided we'd sport our uniforms for the occasion. Yes, thanks.
Let's hope it's not an indicator of things to come tonight. So when we were figuring out what we were going to present to you all, the first thing that sort of occurred to us was to look at Medfield sports, and that probably is partially because it seemed easy. There doesn't seem like there's a lot of arcane fact-finding about 1684, what was going on whenever in that. And also it's relevant to us. Sports is a huge part of the social life at Medfield High School. It takes up a great amount of many students' time. And also it reflects a very important cultural point, not only in Medfield, but in the United States at large over the last 40 years, which we have only recently sort of honed in on, the passage of Title IX in 1972 and its implementation in 1974. And it's as a direct result of this legislation that much of what we know about current Medfield High School culture, and Medfield culture in general, I would say, is as it is. So let's look at Title IX. Slightly off kilter. All right, so once upon a time in Medfield, let's flip through. Yeah. So about, say, 40, 45 years ago, this is what Medfield sports looked like. Football, essentially. And it wasn't just football. There were other teams, basketball, some track, but football dominated, and boys' sports in general was basically all there was. And let's look at what girls' sports had to offer on the side. Not much. Leah, you want to read the little note?
Sure. Okay, the exciting MHS cheerleaders, led by Derek. Oh, should I go? We're good. Okay. All right, the exciting MHS cheerleaders, led by vivacious captain Leslie Ann Morgan, captured yet another Tri-Valley championship. Not only did they add a new golden cheerleading trophy to the display case, but they furthered the progress of the sisterhood, showing that the female athletes are as much winners as the males. Of course, we must mention the fine job they did cheering the football and basketball teams on to victory. Congratulations and thank you. Rah, 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 76.
Right. So it's worth knowing that first off, about the only sport available was cheerleading, and second, that even that sport, its coverage in the yearbook here was patronizing. It wasn't very respectful. So there was a long way to come from this. another picture slide. Yeah, so again, not much going on back in the 1950s. Actually, that's 1956. Yeah. So here's the state of the microphone. Is this better? Okay. Yeah. So here's the state of affairs a little over a century ago. Dour and limited. So again, it bears repeating. There was almost nothing available for girls' sports before the passage of Title IX. Yeah. And here we have sort of the iconic Medfield sports image from the 1960s, boys football on a float being hailed by the town, and cheerleading also represented, but not as much. Yeah, so this is all basically the same thing over and over, but again, it bears repeating. Boys football dominated the conversation, and boys sports in general was the conversation, and girls had almost no room to work with. You want to talk?
So this is the first girl. Thank you. All right, so this is the first girls hockey team that we had at MHS. It was actually in 2007, right? So that was like how many years ago? Math. 7 years ago. Didn't do so hot in math this year, guys. That was so recent, and this is the first one. There was only one girl hockey player up until then. She played on the boys JV team in 2003. So. Ooh. Oh, it's down right. Question mark. Okay.
So Title IX is part of the Education Amendments of 1972 and states in part, no person in the United States shall, you can probably read this, but on the basis of sex be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to discrimination under any education program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. Since this includes pretty much all schools in the country, it also includes pretty much all school sports programs. And when the law was really implemented 2 years later, there was an immediate spike in girls' participation in sports. Yeah. Here's some historical context for the law, just when it was proposed by the political circumstances going on. It was difficult to get it through and took a while, 7 years of sort of legislative conflict to get through. And as it says below, Title IX doesn't refer merely to athletics. It's more comprehensive than that, but that is where we've seen its greatest impact. Question will be answered on the next slide. Right. So I think you can see the chart, but anyway, high school participation from the passage of Title IX to 2006 for female students in high school went up 904%, i.e. 10 times as many girls were participating as were before. Male participation went up by only 15%. And then collegiate participation isn't quite as dramatic as that, but still 456% increase for female athletes, and only a 31% increase for male athletes. That isn't attributable just to demographics or anything like that. That's Title IX. Yeah. And just reinforcing the point, female participation goes up by a lot, male participation goes up with the population. Yeah, so the impact is undeniable. And we're going to hear about it in Medfield from a panel of 5 educators, participants in female sports who have, over the past several decades, observed the changes that have gone on with Medfield sports and are going to talk to them about now. Talk to us about them now. So Suzanne Pratt taught science and coached girls sports in Medfield for many years, starting just before Title IX took effect. Judy Noble taught science and coached girls sports in Medfield for many years, starting in the very first days of Title IX. Mary Ellen Thompson played on the first girls soccer team at Medfield High School and also played softball. Paula Vogler played on the first girls soccer team at Medfield High School and also played on one of the first girls volleyball teams. And Richard DeSorger graduated from Medfield High School just before Title IX came into law and returned to teach as it was being implemented. So if you five could come up here, and we'll start asking some questions.
So, this might be a little awkward handing around the microphone, but let's start with, do you care, Charlie? Okay, so we'll start with Mrs. Noble and Mrs. Pratt, because they're the first on my list. So, okay, so first of all, if you guys could just give us a general, like, talk about a little bit about your experience, a little bit about some victories, some memorable times, the players, any of that stuff would be great.
Could you identify yourself into the mic?
Sure. I'm Judy Noble, and interestingly enough, Leah, that cheerleading team that you were making fun of, I was actually the coach of that team that year. That's quite all right. It's quite all right. And they did win. There was a Tri-Valley League competition at that point in time, as there was for many, many years, and they did participate in that, and they won that year. So, not too shabby, but when I arrived in Medfield in 1974, as the kids have said, there weren't that many opportunities for women's sports. And cheerleading was available. It did need a coach, so for a couple of years I coached cheerleading. In the fall of 75, as I was just strolling through a yearbook back there, we began the girls volleyball program. And I was the varsity coach of the volleyball program. My assistant was another young teacher who I had started with. So between the two of us, we learned enough about volleyball to initiate the program. And in its second year of inception, actually we won a Tri-Valley League. It was a Tri-Valley League championship. So some of the initial players and some of the adults over here may remember some of the names. The Potts twins, Carol and Mary, were on the team. You guys I see a bunch of students here, so you guys may remember Mrs. Potts, who was the home ec teacher at the middle school for years and years. Well, two of her daughters were on the first team. Nancy Sullivan was another student athlete who was on the first team. And, so we were fairly successful. And obviously, since Coach Hastings took over in the 90s and has brought the team into this century, it has become an extremely successful program, as you guys all know, I'm sure. But Mrs. Vogler here played on, so what 77? 77, 78. Fall of 77. So the third year of the program, you were on the team. So that was a good start. And I had the opportunity to coach many things earlier in my career. So cheerleading, volleyball. I coached girls basketball for a couple of years. That program obviously had a long-standing, even well before I got here. The rules did change in the early 70s. When I was playing basketball in high school, and probably what you were too. It was half court. There were six girls on the team, 2 forwards, 2 guards, and 2 rovers. So the forwards and the guards didn't cross the center line, but the 2 rovers could go back and forth. So actually, the year after I graduated from high school, so I graduated from high school in 1970. So the following year, my high school changed to a 5-person team and going up and down and all that. So, that's another one of the changes that was right around the time of Title IX and realizing that girls could do many of the things that were not deemed appropriate in the 50s and 60s, I guess, athletically. So basketball, and then I had the distinct honor of coaching with Mrs. Pratt for 10 years in the softball program. And, I'm going to give her the opportunity to tell you about the successes that the softball program had. And Mary Ellen and Paula both said that they played on the first girls soccer team. The girls soccer team started the year after the volleyball team. So that was, certainly an exciting time for bringing in new sports. The girls track team started at about the same time. You guys probably remember seeing Mr. Shea, the substitute, around. Well, Mr. Shea started the girls track team back in the 70s. And actually, he was the athletic director at that point in time also. So, over the years, it certainly has become, all the programs have become quite successful. I had the opportunity to be principal when the girls hockey team started, and actually a little bit earlier when the girls lacrosse team started. And that was an interesting meeting unto itself at a school committee meeting when the boys wanted to bring in the boys lacrosse team, and Superintendent McGuire wouldn't let that happen without there being a corresponding girls varsity lacrosse team simultaneously. So that was sort of the inception of both of those programs. So that's a little bit about what I've done and seen. I mean, there's lots of things over 40 years that I've seen in terms of, women's sports and the high school sports in general. But that's a few of the highlights of the beginnings anyway. So here's Mrs. Pratt.
Well, I knew Miss Noble would remember more of the dates and all that stuff than I did. But it's kind of interesting. I started teaching at what they called the junior high school in those days. It was grade 7. Yeah, that's right. We had a junior high school that was grade 7, 8, and 9. And we had a 3-year high school. It was 10, 11, and 12. And I was teaching at the junior high school in those days. And I taught biology, right, ladies? And ecology. And so I was invited. I coached, to get back to the I call it the middle school, the junior high school. I guess we all started with cheerleading because the 8th and 9th grade girls came to me, and they were desperate. I knew nothing about cheerleading. And they needed an advisor so that they could go on the bus and so on to the games and that type of thing, and have someone watch them in the afternoon in the cafeteria, I might add, where we practiced on where now the seniors have their lunch area there, where the old stage used to be. So that was a lot of fun. And then basically I was invited to coach with Mrs. Kelly with the field hockey team. I coached JV field hockey. And we just looked that up. I guess that was in 1976. I might have even coached before then, but I'd have to go look through the books. And I had the pleasure of coaching with my very good friend, Karen Graham, who coached the girls' basketball team. That, for those of you might know her as Karen Kozlowski. But I coached the JV team during 1976 also. I was wondering when I was home because in those days I coached 3 seasons. I don't know how I did it. And then, of course, then I was also the varsity softball coach. So as things went along, there were 9th grade boys sports being added. So then 9th grade girls sports were also added. So I had the pleasure of coaching the first 9th grade field hockey team and also the girls' 9th grade basketball team. So that was a lot of fun. I coached some excellent athletes. I was very lucky. A lot of the girls that we coached in the 9th grade went right to varsity as sophomores because they got that. It was almost like a JV experience with the 9th graders. One thing I was telling the field hockey group this fall, I had 8th and 9th graders on the field hockey team, and we went over to, I think it was King Philip one day. And it's one of those things, whenever I get off a school bus with a sports group, I always ask the bus driver, are you staying? Because years ago, I got dropped off in King Philip. Now you have to understand, field hockey players have sticks, shin guards, all this stuff, and they're 8th and 9th graders. And I'm stuck at King Philip with about 35 kids and no bus.
And no cell phone.
No cell phone. I don't remember how I got it done, but I think I went to the principal of the high school where we were playing and asked him to call the Medfield police and please get me a bus. And having heard Chief Mann's name, he's probably the one that got me the bus to get me home. But that always rings true to me when I think about my early days of coaching. And probably the most near and dear to me is obviously the varsity softball program. I don't know, maybe 6 TVL titles or something, at least. We went to the tournament 16 years in a row. And in 1986, we were lucky enough to be 22-0 until the last day. And we went out to Grafton, to some little ballpark in the middle of nowhere. I still don't know where that ballpark was. And we played Smith Academy and lost the final game of the 1986 season. And I just remember a reporter coming up to me and saying, if you had your druthers, would you have rather lost a game somewhere along the line and won the last one? And I'm thinking to myself, well, what do you think? What do you think? I think girls' sports in Medfield have grown so much, and I've been here longer than Miss Noble has. I came in 1971, and I've had the pleasure the last 9 years to go back to coaching JV field hockey with Coach Mason, and it's just been a lot of fun. I did go back to softball for a while, and I enjoyed that also. But the mind is willing, but the body just can't do the rigors of all the stuff that coaching requires nowadays. there's one thing I think I will remember is Miss Noble wasn't on the bus that day, but in 1986, when we were coming, I'm not going to get through this. We were coming into Medfield, down 109, from the state tournament game, the final one, and the bus ride was terrible. And we came over that hill down towards the Charles, and Chief Mann had a cruiser and a fire engine there. And they brought us to the high school, and there were people hugging us, and I don't think I'll ever forget that. I think I better stop.
Great. Thank you so much, both of you. I actually had Mrs. Pratt as both a field hockey coach and a softball coach, so it was nice to get some background on that. Thank you so much for talking. Now we're going to move on to some players. We have Mary Ellen and Paula. So whoever wants to go first, you just want to introduce yourself and say about around when you played and give a little bit about your experience, any special moments, that was awesome. Anything along those lines would be great.
I'm Mary Ellen. I was on the first girls soccer team in high school. But before we got sports in the high school, there was other girls sports, not school affiliated, that I don't think they exist anymore. I don't think they need to. So we played soccer spring and fall, and then we played softball in the summer. And my father was very gender biased, and girls did not play sports. And my mother was very non-gender biased. And when I started to get very upset that I wasn't allowed to play sports, my mother signed me up for every single thing I wanted to play and did not tell my father. And I was playing softball one summer, and my dad had to give my mother a message or something, and he came down to the Little League field where we were playing, and I was up, and I didn't know he was there, and I hit a home run over the fence. And when my dad got home from work the next day, he threw me a ball, a bat, and a glove, and he said, "If you're going to play, goddammit, you're not going to throw like a girl." So after that, he never missed a game. He coached a lot of our teams. We played a lot of soccer because we got to play both fall and spring. And the first year for soccer, we got to play as ninth graders, even though it was high school. We were still in the junior high school back then. And we were allowed to play, and none of us really knew what we were doing. It was all pretty new for us. So it was a good learning experience. And when I look at what girls do now, I'm amazed at what you kids can do, because we didn't have this kind of background. We didn't have these coaches. We didn't have, now, our coaches were great, don't get me wrong, but they were new for girls. There were no sports. When I was little, I'd go to the football games with my dad, and I watched the cheerleaders because I couldn't play football, but I could be a cheerleader. That was my option. I could be a cheerleader. But my problem was cheerleaders didn't get dirty, and I wanted to get dirty, So, you aspire to things when you're kids, and then, our posters on the wall were all of male athletes. And I look around now, and I'm like, boy, I would have, Brandy Chastain, and I would have Mae Ham, and I would have, Abby Wamba. I would have these people all over my walls. And, who did I have? Pele. Just men. There were no women to aspire to, really. So it was a very interesting progression, and to watch where it's gone from now it's really amazing. I would have loved to play lacrosse, but, it didn't exist. And just a brief aside, I was an exchange student to Argentina when I was in high school, and I went down there, and there was no girl sports at all, none. No, girls were not allowed to play anything, and even field hockey was played by the men. And when I went down there and I started dribbling a soccer ball, they were horrified, and they were appalled, and they were embarrassed for me because, girls don't do this. It was very unfeminine, and, now probably they have great girl sports down there, I would assume, by now, but back then it wasn't done. So we've come a long way, I guess.
Can you tell the story about playing with soccer with Istanbul?
Oh, well, this had nothing to do with school. There was the old ladies team. There was, what was it, over 20s, I think? Over 20. We were all in college. Paula still plays, God bless her. You know, she still plays. But we're playing, and Judy Noble's on the team, and I'm running down the field, and I'm open, and she's got the ball, and I'm like, Miss Noble, I'm open. And she just stomps on the ball and stomps and turns and looks at me, and she goes, no, you have to get over this. You have to call me Judy. What do I do when I see her today? Hi, Miss Noble. I still call her Miss Moulton. I'm like, oh, Miss Moulton, Mr. DeSarga, how you doing? It's just something you don't let go of.
My name's Paula, and I had a different growing up experience than Mary Ellen because in my house, girls played sports. That was it. It was me and my brother. He played. So I found it interesting hearing the background because I forgot we played in 9th grade. I thought it was 10th grade. I just wanted to play soccer. So Title IX, first women's soccer team, it meant nothing. We just wanted to play because we played together. I didn't find out, actually, when did we find out it was the first team? It was years later. A friend went back to the school for something, and she said, hey, I saw a picture of you guys on the wall. It said First Women's Soccer Team. We were all like, really? Didn't even register. So I just always felt like there were opportunities because my mindset was you just played. And back then, you could, because you played fall, spring, you could try a new sport. It wasn't year-round, like soccer now. You play all year. So I tried volleyball. I got to call her Miss Noble. I can't help it.
Did you call me first?
No.
No, we never called you.
No, you never called an adult by their first name.
No, we didn't get nervous either.
I know. Anyway. I had Miss Noble, and my memory of, you won't remember this, but.
Oh, try me.
And this was new to me. Volleyball was new to me. And so at practice, you had to overhand serve, I think, 25 in a row. And then, you could leave. So I'm on the varsity team, and we're serving, and, after 10 in the net, so I go, and everybody's leaving, and I'm the last one in the gym. And I'm telling you, about a half an hour had gone by. Miss Noble was gone. I'm still sitting there. And she finally walked through and was like, what are you doing? And I said, you said 25 serves over the net. And she's like, go home.
No, I don't remember.
Yeah, that sticks in my mind. So, but there's so much, now for girls to do, so much more than what we had. But back then, I didn't realize it because there were sports available. So,
And I don't really need to downgrade the coaching because our coaching really was amazing. But Miss Bolton, she had to learn about how to coach these teams because they didn't grow up with it either. This was new territory for all of us, I think.
One thing I didn't mention is I did go to Ashland High School, and I was lucky enough to go and play 4 years of field hockey, 4 years of basketball, and 4 years of softball. Yes. So I was able to coach in the sports that I had played. I did not have the ability to play in college. The financial opportunities were not there. But I was very lucky in the fact that I can remember my mother saying, you're going to work for the rest of your life. Play sports, do your thing in high school, I did all the activities, the yearbook, the whole thing. So I was very lucky, and I did get to play for some very, very good coaches at Ashland High School. Actually, Miss Bartholomew, who still lives in, I believe it's in Rentham, coached me in field hockey and softball, was an excellent coach. And Grump Walker Field in Ashland is named after a baseball coach who also helped us as softball players. So, And when I did my student teaching, I was able to assist the varsity softball coach at Amherst Regional High School. So I had a chance by going to Ashland High School to play four sports. Thank you.
Soccer was new for the boys, relatively, also, back then. So, maybe it's just that it was a new sport all the way around.
All right, well, thank you. Now we're going to switch gears a little bit because we have a male on the board. So I'm going to hand this over to you, Mr. DeSorger. And if you could just say, you have an interesting perspective because you could see girls coming in and you were obviously a male. So if you can... So if you want to just talk about like what your old hockey teammates might have thought if girls tried to play on the hockey team, or what you saw as a teacher looking in on Title IX and all that stuff, that would be great.
And your sister, what your sister was.
Won't reach. Yeah, I actually did not play in any girls' sports. What I thought, and just in some of the conversation when you first started in the beginning, just a little background. You got to remember Medfield was an incredibly small town, and the high school comes in 1870, and in 1897 you get the first sport, and that's football that comes in. And from the early 1900s, the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, really football and baseball were really king in the sports. They were male-dominated. They were sports. Especially like in the 50s and 60s, it was a town-wide event. So it was really many times the only kind of game in town. And so on Saturday afternoons, literally the whole town would come out to watch the football games. So it was a big event. It was very much male-dominated. The girls had basketball. And what is funny, up until the high school, which is now the Dale Street School, was built in the early 1940s, there was no gymnasium in Medfield. And so what they had to do is they had to use the hall up in what is now Town Hall, where in 1996-7, they did the renovations in Town Hall, but there used to be a hall that was up there, and that was the basketball gym for the high school. And old-timers will tell me they can remember taking a shot. They would get the ball into one basket, and they could just shoot right from there to get a basket because it was not regulation. And there was a balcony that was there, and a lot of times they would shoot, and then the ball would get stuck up in the balcony. And so what they did, they actually brought fish netting and stuff in to cover that so that the ball wasn't going to come in there. So, up until, I just jotted down a couple of classes, but up until the 1960s, the graduating classes were like under 30. So you're talking just a few kids that were there. And even in the male sports, from 1938 up until the 1940s, there were so few males, they had six-man football. Medfield couldn't field a full team. There just were not enough players, and they had six-man football that took place. But Medfield really, I think, with Title IX, missed the golden opportunity. I see Ruth here. She'll remember this well. But Medfield missed the golden opportunity back in 1941 when we had Myrtle Chick. Myrtle Chick was a senior at Medfield High School, and she wanted to go out for football. And I have the article that was in the Boston Globe that ran on that, and it says, Medfield girl turns out for football, it's no use. And I just want to read a little bit to give you of what was happening, and you'd never see this in a newspaper today. They would be suing the person. And the coach in his remarks to Myrtle about why she could not play football. But let me just read a little bit of this. And again, this actually made the Globe here. It says, this Myrtle is no clinging vine. All hands agree that Myrtle Chick is probably one of the best football players at Medfield High School. Even Coach Jack Welsh admits as much. But he adds regretfully
that conventions dictate that he bar her from the squad, so she was turned down when she appeared for practice today. Her father, policeman Fred Chick of Vinyl Road, believes she's a better player than her brother Bob, who was one of Medfield's starting backs. Principal Alton Hartford declares Myrtle is such an outstanding athlete that it's possible she might actually make the team on her own merits. But the principal goes along with the coach in believing that it's not proper for a girl to play high school football. Other members of the squad like Myrtle, and they treat her athletic abilities with respect, but they said if she's on the team, all would quit. Besides, we don't want to block and tackle a girl even in practice, they said. The girls among Myrtle's senior class are her staunchest supporters. They persuaded her to try out for the varsity team after she unsuccessfully attempted to organize a girls' football team. She'll show them if they only give her a chance, they said. And these girls should have healthy respect for her talents. Myrtle has been a member of the high school girls basketball team since the 7th grade, and she's the starting catcher on the girls softball team. Furthermore, she has shown them after supper gridiron sessions during the past couple of weeks that she can tackle and wallop a guard with the best of them. She stands 5'6" and weighs 160, which is about the average height and weight of the boys on the team. So it was that Myrtle turned out with the rest when the first practice took place. She didn't set herself an easy task. She declared that she was a rival and was going to take Captain John Finance's job as quarterback away from him. Why don't you stick to knitting, tennis, or croquet, said Coach Welsh. Those are the games for sissies. I'm quoting here. Give me a chance and I'll prove I can make the team, she said. But the conventions prevailed, and it doesn't look as if she's going to get that chance. Now she's thinking of another attempt to try an all-girls team. Don't let all this convince you that Myrtle isn't a regular girl. Off the field, she's as popular with the boys as any Medfield High School co-ed. And she's also a good dancer and a member of the Sub-Deb Club. I don't know what that is. And in the evening, guess what? She's her best mother's helper. That was 1941. So Medfield actually had a chance if they let her play. Medfield would have, I think, made the headlines of girls' sports, but that did not happen. I jotted down just a couple of things. The girls' sports in the 50s and 60s would have been softball, would have been field hockey, cheerleading. In 1970, my senior year, tennis came in. You had girls and boys tennis, but only the boys played in a league. The girls did not. They just did pickup games. There was no league for that. And back in, I think it was 1957, that John Cuoco, who was there for many, many years, started the track program. And then, as you mentioned, Bernie Shea brought in the cross country, and then Bernie Shea brought in for the girls later. This is actually the 50th anniversary. My dad was very instrumental in starting the hockey program. That was back in 1964, so just 50 years ago. With that, and that program we ran as an independent high school team. We were called the Charles River Valley League, and at the time there was Medfield, Dover, Sherburne, Millis, Stoughton, and Milford that was in that. And he pushed for the high school to take over that sport. And it took 13 years until 1977. And at the time, I think in 77, they had the high school boys come in, and then they had the girls soccer come in. Warren Sheard was very active in pushing for that. I think the boys soccer had come in a couple of years earlier, like in 74. So you had the boys soccer, and then by 77, you had the girls soccer also come in. But it's very different. Look at the high school students today. The options that you have today, before Title IX, one, again, Medfield was small. We didn't have a lot of the sports that we have today. It's incredible, and I think it's to the credit of the administration and the students and others at Medfield with the different sports that are offered. But basically, you had like 1 or 2 sports per season that were available. And today you just have so many additional sports. In the 70s, you had girls cheerleading, gymnastics come in. That came in the mid 70s, I think, as a result of Title IX that was in there. And then again in 2006, the girls hockey came in. My sister Eileen, I think if they had that, she always wanted to play hockey, and it was like, well, you can't. That's kind of a boys sport. My nephew Justin, who was my brother Lee's son, is now the varsity girls coach at Westwood girls hockey, and they just won the state title in Boston Garden. And, you know, to watch, I go over a lot the past couple of years because he's coaching, and of course, I'm still rooting for Medfield when I go there. My brother's not too happy for me, but watch the girls skate. It's incredible how fast they are. It would blow my father away to see the caliber of the girls' sports that are taking place. And the other thing you have to remember, before Title IX, there was no youth program. And you talked about before about role models and stuff. Well, we had it. We could see the Bruins, and we could see baseball, and clearly those stars were out there, and the girls didn't have that for hockey because there was no girls hockey, and it took a while for youth hockey to develop, and then a feeder system, so that eventually, when the kids were young, and eventually they would move up into the high school. And it's just a great program Medfield has. If you go by the outside of the high school now, the number of state championships in the past 15 or so years, you're over 20-something state championships that are up there, and it's probably equal number male-female is my guess. I didn't actually number that, but it's just incredible the number of championships that Medfield has, and the caliber of sports that is in Medfield High School now.
Just in terms of of hockey, I think back to the late 70s and very early 80s. Actually, 1980 was the year that this young lady graduated. She played three sports at Medfield High School. She played soccer, basketball, actually only her senior year, I think, and softball. But she went to Princeton basically on a hockey scholarship because she had played hockey through a club team. It was Watertown or Needham, one of those. But she did end up going to, as I said, she went to Princeton. And we had, that was one that I thought of in terms of hockey, but there were certainly some basketball stars who went on to play at college, and softball players who went on to play at college as well throughout the years, as well as soccer and volleyball players who went on. So we may have started small, but we had then and still have quality students who are quality athletes and do an excellent job at representing Medfield High School. So I'm sure that some of you guys will go on to play in college as well.
I just had one quick thought. The story, you know, we're all chuckling about Myrtle Chick and people's attitudes and this, you know, girl wanting to play football. Well, fast forward to 2012. My daughters play field hockey, and they played a team, and there was a boy on the other team in a kilt. You're going to play the sport, you have to wear the uniform. And let me tell you, that there was a lot of people at that game because, you know, everyone was kind of... And there was this, you know, discussion, this kid's stronger, faster, whatever. Girls schooled him.
Thank you. It's actually funny you say that because we play field hockey and there's a boy for Bellingham who plays, and whenever our Bellingham game is in the afternoon, that day at school, everyone's always like, "You're playing against the boy? You're playing against the boy today? Oh my God, oh my God." And we're like, yeah, playing against the boy. He didn't actually play very much. He kind of sat on the sideline, but whatever. Okay, so thank you all so much for coming. We really appreciate it. We loved all the stories. You guys did an excellent job. Yeah.
I was one of the ones, I went on and played at college, not on a scholarship, unfortunately, but I went to UNH, and I played soccer. And at the time, that was the first place I really felt like there was this dichotomy between girls and boys sports, not Medfield, but at UNH, because for the soccer team, it was a club team at that time. And that meant if there was bad weather and maybe fields would get ruined, the football team got our field. We didn't get to practice. If there was bad weather, if you had a game coming up, we'll go practice at 6 in the morning. We had to, because it was a club. Other club teams had drivers, you know, to away games. We had to have teammates learn how to drive the bus, drive to the games, play, drive back from the games. I'm pretty sure they don't do that anymore. So, you know, that's one thing I think from Title IX that I was like, yes, it's not fair. You guys are lucky.
Thank you. Yeah, we are very lucky. Right? And
Yeah, one other thing is Richard was reading from the Globe in 1941. It reminded me that it's something that many people here will remember, but many will not. It was in 1964, I believe. There was a change at the Globe in the way help wanted jobs were advertised. These days, of course, you see help wanted professional, maybe engineering, maybe retail, maybe healthcare, stuff like that. They had a much simpler way until 1964. Help wanted male and help wanted female. If you wanted to get a good job, you had to apply for the male job, and if you wanted to work for long hours at crummy pay, you had to apply for a female. And it was a hard thing to turn over. But that was a big change for the Globe at the time, and other newspapers did it about that same time. But that was before.
Another sports-related thing with newspapers is a woman I went to college with, she lived on my floor when I was a freshman, is now one of the head sports writers in the Herald, which is not a lot of those. She reports on mostly Patriots now. She started with the Browns.
And I'm going to come up front to tell them.
Would you like the microphone as well?
Yeah, because I have to use it. My last name is Warren, and I'm from the graduated in 1949, and there were 18 in my class. And I played football. I was a 135-pound guard, and we played 11-man football. And I remember the 6-man. We played 11-man football, but we had 13 on our squad, something like that. And the coach at that time's name was Steve Levinitis. And Steve Levinitis played football at Boston College, and I think that he was also played in the pros. Anyway, he was a big guy. I'm sure he was a lineman. And when I was a senior, that's when he was a coach. For some reason or other, he lost his job in the fall. And so the football squad left school. We walked out of school, and I can hear Peter Engineering today, who was a science teacher, say, "Warren McCarthy, get back here." But we kept going. And Steve Levinitis lived in an apartment above Larkins. And what we did at night, we would go down in front of Larkins and practice football. I have no idea what happened to Steve. I think we won a game. I don't know how we did it, but we did.
I also remembered that, just because we had a women's soccer team, that didn't mean everybody had a women's soccer team. So our bus rides weren't, 20 minutes to the next town over. I think we went to Pepperell, Winchester. I mean, we went far.
School had a soccer team.
Right.
And for the first couple of years, you guys actually played college teams.
We did. We played.
You played Harvard. You played BC.
We beat them too. I remember when we played Harvard, I had broken my arm and I had a cast on, and we wrapped it all up in foam because I wanted to play, and the other team objected, but the ref didn't show up. So they asked in the audience, "Does anybody here know how to ref?" And my father says, "Oh, I know how to ref." So the other team comes out and says, "She can't play, she's got a cast." "Oh, she's fine. And we beat them. Do you remember that game? We beat them. It was like 3-0. It was great.
Yes.
When the girls' teams came in, was there any prejudice by the male teams? Or were they just supportive of them all?
Well, we used to have to scrimmage with the boys in practice sometimes, and I can remember you had to do a chest trap in soccer, and every time somebody did a chest trap, the entire boys' team would fall over laughing. And I don't know whether that was teenage boys and boobs, or whether it was, like, oh my God. I'm not really sure what it was all about, so we did a lot of chest traps because you get a free run.
I never felt like there was any prejudice. We just wanted to play. So I never felt like the boys, were looking down on us or anything like that at all. I think they were receptive to the games.
Anything else? Okay. All right. Should I hand this over? So I just want to say thank you to everyone who came. It's really important to both Charlie and me, Medfield Sports, and also the Historical Society. So, Charlie, do you have anything else to say? Do you have anything else to add?
I would also say thank you.
I covered that. All right. So, David. Do you want
The only thing I wanted to add is if I know this was a very good presentation here, and they all had good things to say. In case anyone's mind wandered and thought, well, next year here's a program idea. Okay, you'll get back to me. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you very much for coming. And as I say, we will have the Strawberry Social for members in June, and we have the Medfield History Day on Flag Day, June 14th. Okay, thank you.